We are expecting 600,000 metric tons of wheat from 121,982 hectares that were planted, which has exceeded the target that was been given of 120,000. That is grown by just under 1,000 farmers, commercial farmers. The reflection on the food insecure population relates to the food insecure population in rural areas, in communal areas. So of the 9.2 million people in rural Zimbabwe, 6.2 million people will require assistance between now and March next year. So whether we harvest 600,000 metric tons or not, that number will most likely not change. In fact, it might increase the number of needy people. But we have put in context that the shortfall that we are likely to have, we require 464,000 metric tons to feed the 6.2 million people at 7.5 kgs per person per month, and increasing that to 8.5 kgs per person per month from October through to March. We have 4.5 million learners and primary school going children, and we are feeding them at the rate of 27,000 metric tons per term. And so they will require 55,000 metric tons for the third term and the first term of 2025. We have in the strategic grain reserve, as of yesterday, 264,000 metric tons. So the shortfall is 200,000 metric tons for what government will take care of, which is feeding the rural population and ensuring that learners have a hot meal once a day when they go to school. We anticipate that we are going to harvest 600,000 metric tons of wheat, and the season has been very good. We require 360,000 metric tons for normal consumption for 12 months to September next year. So the difference between what we're going to harvest of 600,000 metric tons and the 360,000 metric tons for bread, scones, and other things is 240,000 metric tons. If we took that and put it to the strategic grain reserve, it is more than enough to meet the shortfall of 200,000 metric tons, which is where government draws this comfort that the wheat-based food security strategy is indeed working. But as an additional risk mitigation measure, the government has put in place a mechanism to import 300,000 metric tons, of which 32,000 metric tons has now arrived, which is why we are saying that we are very comfortable with the plans that government has of providing food to all the rural people that need the food and for the school feeding program. And while we are at that, we said the 1.7 million urban people will receive the equivalent in cash of 7.5 kgs per month, and that will increase from October onwards. The private sector, we have indicated capacity to import 1 million metric tons to assist and complement government in this effort, have so far imported 567,000 metric tons. And they will concentrate on feeding the urban people and also for provision of feed. So that's the context in which we find ourselves, and this is where we're saying this is the food security outlook to March 2025. Cabinet approved a couple of weeks ago the summer plan. So already in terms of planning, we have a very concrete plan to ensure that we respond, and we respond resoundingly to the expected normal to above normal rainfall season. First, the impact will likely be felt this winter as we harvest the winter wheat. So in terms of our planning, we have said the rains will be early. So we must therefore put in place mechanisms to ensure that we combine all the wheat by the 15th of October. And the 310 combine harvesters in the country are being configured and reconfigured to ensure that that happens. And farmers have been allocated to wheat harvesting clusters, and we now know the wheat date of planting and the likely week that they are also going to be harvesting, and there's that matchmaking. We've also now begun to move grain from the Mashonaland provinces, where we still have quite a lot of wheat in storage, to the southern provinces to make way for the incoming harvest. We also are beginning to look at what GMB depots can take higher moisture wheat. And we are looking at about 13.1% instead of the normal 12.5%. So with the expected early rains, there are also consequences for the winter wheat, so that we avoid that being rained on. We expect that we will rebound, and 3.2 million metric tons of cereals are planned for the 2024-2025 season. And this will be produced under the Presidential Input Scheme from Vudza Intwasa, and there will be lots of agroecological tailoring and tailoring crops to regions. We also expect the private sector to come under the umbrella of the Food Contractors Association and support 90,000 hectares. We expect the ADA scheme, which has become the food security mechanism for the government, to focus on 100,000 hectares, 60,000 hectares irrigated maize, and the balance being dryland maize and sorghum. We also expect self-financed farmers to come on board to be able to assist, as they may have the linkages with banks and can get credit, or those that are in communal areas will rely on a transfer of cash from people from town. We also expect the government-enabled bank-facilitated financing, which we used to call command, to be in operation and to support at least 65,000 hectares in the coming season. So 2 million hectares of maize will be under production, about 500,000 metric tons, 500,000 hectares of traditional grains. We expect other crops such as tobacco to rebound also, and rebound in a big way. We have a record seed sales for tobacco, for example, and we expect more than 300 million kilograms to be produced. Similarly, we have very robust plans for Kotko. We expect that they'll be able to produce upwards of 110 million kilograms of cotton, up from the 10 million that they produced this year. So we have very concrete plans for this summer to be able to take advantage of these rains to ensure that we can produce enough for ourselves and replenish the strategic grain reserve. But more importantly, as we climate-proof agriculture at household level through Pfumvudza Intwasa, it is absolutely critical that Zimbabwe prepares and expands irrigation development, so that whether it rains or not, Zimbabwe is able to produce sufficient to feed itself in a year where we have abundant rain, and in a year such as the one that we've passed, where we had this damaging El Nino year. Thank you very much.